statistically society would say that shouldn't be here, but I beg to differ, because I do believe I have value and worth and purpose, and that wasn't dictated by how I came into the world.
Dear Jane, the life-giving podcast.
Born out of remarkably dire circumstances, Steventhen Holland has an amazing story to tell, and we're going to hear it today on Dear Jane. Welcome, I'm Scott Baker. I'm so excited to get to today's guest. Steventhen Holland, that's spelled Steventhen, came into the world under extraordinary circumstances. Because of her mental disabilities, his mother was being encouraged to abort him, but she resisted. We'll let Steventhen tell the whole story. Steventhen, thank you for joining us. Let's start here. Why are you passionately pro-life?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think I'm passionately pro-life because this is my story, right? When I think about life, it's, just I had people in my life that saw value in me from day one. And if I wouldn't have been here, and they wouldn't have seen the value of life in me, I wouldn't be a dad of 3 beautiful girls, 16, 13, and 10, and be married for 17 years. I just look at so many blessings I have in life, and I'm just thankful, to have life. And when I think about my circumstances, I'm the poster child. I feel like in some sense, as far as like statistically, society would say that I shouldn't be here, but I beg to differ, because I do believe I have value and worth and purpose, and that wasn't dictated by how I came into the world.
Yeah. So let's get into your story. It's fascinating. When I first met you, I thought we've got to have Steventhen on the podcast. So tell us your life story.
Okay. Well, I have to start when I was an 8-year-old little boy. I had some friends of mine at school. They say, "Man, you're weird and different." I'm like, "What are you talking about? That's not nice to say to anybody, right?" And they said, "Well," I said, "What's that mean?" And they said, "Well, your skin color is the wrong color." And I'm like, "What?" And what they were referring to is my family was Caucasian. They were white. And I know you guys can't see this, but I'm brown. I do look a little different than the rest of my family. So that started a conversation that day. I get home with my mom, and I'm on the edge of the bed. And I find out at 8 years old that I was brought into their family as a 7-day-old foster child. They officially adopted me at age 2. And I always like to say that, love goes deeper than color. Love goes deeper than DNA or blood. This family just brought me in and loved on me. So, also I can say, though, that 8-year-old little boy, even though I knew I was loved, I had questions, right? Mm-hmm. Why am I the wrong color? Why, why is this not my family? Why wasn't I born into this family? So it started a journey for me. I think about the biggest why question is, why would a mother not want her son? That would be a question I would carry for a long time. But let's fast forward to, I'm married. My wife and I had gone through 2 miscarriages. I was a youth pastor at the time. So I'm a depressed middle school pastor, asking God, why again have we lost these babies? But God used that pain in my life to seek out my mom. He put it in my spirit. It's time to look for your mom. So I'm 27 years old at this time, 2009. And I grabbed 8 pages of typewriter paperwork that I was given by my adopted family when I was early on in my life. And they said, "Hey, listen, if you ever, want to, seek her out, track her down, here's the information we have." So I took that 8 pages of typewriter paperwork. I went on Google, and 3 days later, I found a website for this man named Steve Holt. He's a magician and ventriloquist from Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I know you guys may not know me well, but I don't like clowns. I don't like it. I don't like Chucky. I don't like any of that stuff. So, I'm crossing the screen, throwing holy water on it. Like, I'm not going on this man's website. But something inside of me just said, you click on his bio. So I clicked on his bio. His name's Steve Holt again. My birth certificate says Steventhen William Holt was my given name at birth. My birth mom's name was Glenda Sue Holt. So I'm like, okay, last name matches up. Long story short, y'all, I go on his bio. Every single thing on the paperwork I have from 1982 matches his family history. And so long story short, I'm meeting my birth uncle online at 27 years old. About 2 months later, I jump on a plane and go up to meet him. And then he tells me how I came into the world. And he looked at me and said, listen, there were six of us. He was one of six kids, and their parents died in the early age. They were all thrown into orphanages or foster care. And my mom, Glenda Sue Holt, was the baby of those six. And when she aged out of the system, she went into a mental facility. And one night at the facility, she was actually raped by 5 men. And from that attack on her, she got pregnant with me, but she only functioned as an 11-year-old mentally. So she's probably like, can't even fathom what's happened to her, trying to process that. And then she definitely didn't want anybody to know. So she didn't tell anybody. So she's in a state-ran facility, mental facility in the state of Georgia, and they're not giving her options, right? She has no family, no money, no resources. She really has nothing. So statistically and circumstances, some people would say that, hey, this pregnancy is not worth carrying. So they were pressuring her daily to abort her baby. And what's wild to me, I call her my hero. She's only 11-year-old mental capacity in an 18-year-old woman's body, and she still knew the value of life. She literally, at some point, ran away from there, carried me for the duration of the pregnancy, and wound up 9 months pregnant in a cardboard box living in behind an old grocery store in this little town called Whitwell, Tennessee. If you're from there, they say Whitwell. Don't know how they spell it. But this 16-year-old boy was skipping school one day, saw this box move behind the store, and he wound up taking her and carrying me at 9 months old to his family's home. They cared for us for 2 weeks until they got us to the hospital on March 31st of 1982, and she gave birth to me in Chattanooga, Tennessee at Erlanger Hospital. And everybody wants to know, like, Steventhen, what kind of name is that? And, this 18-year-old, 11-year-old mental capacity said, I want my son to be named Steventhen William. So William is my middle name, and that was my grandfather, her dad, and Stephen was my uncle. So she wanted me to have both names. So the way she spoke it, though, with her mental capacity was, in her mind, it was all one. So Steventhen William. So Steventhen William, right? So they recorded it Steventhen. So I'm the only Steventhen in the world, according to Google.com, right? But so yeah, that's I found out at 27 years old that this is how I came into the world. It's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. There's so much to unpack there. So let's start with because there's so many things that you can speak to personally. So you're 8 years old when you realize that you're adopted.
Yes.
Right. Take us back to that time a little bit. You describe how you realize, hey, maybe I don't look like the rest of my family, that sort of thing. But how did you feel? But even then, growing up as an adolescent, you mentioned why didn't my mom want me? Sort of help us understand how someone in that position may feel.
Yeah, I like to say that the 8-year-old Steventhen, I knew I was loved. People always tease me, like, it took you to 8 years old to find out you were the wrong color, right? That's what they said. Like, you were a different color than your family, but it did. It was crazy because love, right? Love. It didn't matter about my skin color or my DNA or my blood. Like, this was my family from the moment that I was placed into their arms. So it wasn't a question of love. I always tease. I wrote a book in 2015 called The Journey, Brokenness to Wholeness. And there's a picture on page 36 of my book. It's my dad. And it's the only earthly father I've ever known. He passed away on August 19th of 2014 with Alzheimer's. But the picture is him holding me as a brand new, soon 7 days, 8, 9 days old, the picture. And he comes in from work. I thought he was black most of my life because he's working in the coal mines. He would bathe and he would come in and hold me on his chest, heart to heart. And I got to hold him on his way out of this world like he held me on my way in. So again, I'm saying I knew I was loved, but even though I knew I was loved, I still was an 8-year-old little boy that just found out that this wasn't my blood family, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first time in my life I remember asking God why, like that I can really remember, and also feeling broken, because I just didn't have answers to like these big questions in life, which the biggest one, why would a mother not want her son? Why did somebody throw me away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, I think as far as I know, every adolescent goes through a period of I'm weird,
Right.
just self-doubt, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it would just seem to me to be amplified given the circumstance. I mean, did you ask your family why your original mom gave you up, or what were the conversations during that time?
Yeah, I did. But the only thing they actually gave me what I call a gift today was those 8 pages of typewriter paperwork. They had it in a folder that they were keeping for me for when this conversation that happened at 8 years old happened. And they had journaled a lot, just to help me, to have like pictures and just handwritten. It was basically like a scrapbook that they had made me, and they had those 8 pages in the front of it. We were very open discussion. Do you know who she is, or where she would be now? Do we have any information? Which they didn't have any. So that was kind of where this is all we have is this paperwork. So they gave me permission to, hey, if God puts it on your heart to seek her out when that time is, we're going to support you. We'll be behind you. But this is all we have. So,
and did they know about her mental challenges or no?
No, I think they may have suspected. I think there might have been a little chatter, at like Human Services or Department of Human Services, but there was no, what's the word? I guess legal documentation or anything like that they had. So,
all right. So fast forward, then you say you're 27 years old,
mm-hmm.
and you decide that you want to learn more about your birth family.
Right.
So when you found out the reality for your mother, take us, how did you feel? The first time you met her, the first time you learned about her, sort of take us into that moment as best you can.
Well, from 8 years old to the age of 27, when I found out about how I came into the world and all that, I can't even tell you how many times I thought about looking for my mom, right? Looking for my birth mom. I would come like this close, and it's just right there, like almost about to walk out of the door and do this thing. But the timing was just never right. Like something always, deep down inside my heart, my soul just said, no, it's not time. And I'd always stop. But what had happened, my wife and I had actually lost 2 babies. We lost our first pregnancy at 8 weeks old, and then we lost our third pregnancy at 10 weeks old. So there was this pain that I was carrying, this talk about broken. And I was blaming myself. Like really, I was really kind of the enemy had told me that it was my fault. Like if we knew, if I had medical history, which I didn't have, I still don't have it to this day at 41 years old. I still don't know any medical history. But that was what led me to really be proactive. Was I need to, if I could find my birth mom, maybe I could get some answers to help save my kids. Mm-hmm. My dad heart, I had matured a lot. Life circumstances had changed. So that's really what led to seeking her out. So, I met my birth uncle, and then he tells me she's alive 5 hours south of where we're standing in his home in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So we jump in the car and drive down to this mental facility, and I get to meet my hero, my birth mom, for the first time. And all I wanted was to get some answers, right, to see if I could maybe find some medical stuff. But God had such a bigger plan. we were, we had a plan, right? And God's plans are always better, but we had a plan because again, she's 46 when I'm about to meet her, but mentally she's still only an 11-year-old child. So, we were processing like, we're going to come up into this mental facility where she's living, and it's a group home, men and women and staff. And it's just going to be, here's your 27-year-old son. Hi. That's going to be pretty overwhelming for anybody, but especially for an 11-year-old mental capacity adult. So we were going to do this private interaction in her room. And, just that way, if there was, any complications, if she had, if it was too overwhelming, it's not putting her on the spot. But my uncle is a magician, right? And ventriloquist. So he did a show for the residents just to kind of lighten the mood. And we had a camera rolling, and he does his magic show. She sings a song, and I just felt led to sing Amazing Grace. And I'm singing Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved. And when I hit that word saved, I lost it, because not only, am I saved spiritually, but this woman I'm looking at in the eyes saved my life. And she kind of, she looks at me kind of puzzled, and she's like, why are you not singing? That look. And she just sings the rest of the song. Such a beautiful, she sings the verse, finishes the verse for me. And then long story short, we meet right there on the spot in front of everybody in the commons area, and the video camera's rolling the whole time and picks it all up. So I have this treasure now, right?
Yeah.
That I get to share with the world when I get to speak. And so.
And her initial reaction once she understood was what?
Oh, it was just pure joy. The video, which it's on YouTube, by the way, so listeners can, you can go on there and click on it. We just made it available because we feel like it's such a blessing, not just for me to see, but for people to find hope, be encouraged. But there's some subtitles on there to help to be able to hear what she's saying. And she's like, oh, I'm so happy. I would have never, I love you, son. I would have never given you up if I could have kept you. She realized, even though she was only 11 years old, now in her mind, she was like, son, you certainly sure have grown tall. Like I remember, singing nursery rhymes to you and all those things. Like, that was a lot of years ago. But almost like to me, when I looked at her, like even there was a moment where we actually did make it to her room, and I had made a scrapbook for her that had pictures, because she didn't have any pictures of me. So I just literally filled it up with as many pictures as I could find to share my story with her through pictures, of my life, and, how God took care of me, for her choosing life. And then my adopted family, and she starts rocking as she's looking at the pictures. Like I noticed that, like this, she's still a mother, she just starts rocking as she's looking at her baby through pictures, and we capture that as part of the video that you'll see if you go and watch that. And it just, I don't know, it just amazes me, that she's still a mother. She may not have raised me, but she gave life to me, and she'll always be my mom,
Yeah. Yeah. And so what about the relationship then from that day forward?
Ooh. You mind? I'm going to be real.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful thing. Like, we actually had 11 years with her. She passed away on Thanksgiving of 2020. She choked on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which was very tragic. I kind of, not laughing because it's comical, but I'm like, really, Lord, you're going to take her out with a PB&J after all the stuff she's been through in her life? It was one of those questions, again, those moments where I'm like, really, why, Lord? Why that? But 11 years, beautiful years, spent with Mama Glenda, which my daughters, all three of my girls, they're 16, 13, and 10 now. Like, they were young when they got to meet her. So we had 11 good years they call her Gigi. Grandma Glenda. But even though those were beautiful years, they were also painful years, because she's a ward of the state. She was a ward of the state of Georgia. So, they do the best they can with patients like that. There a lot of times they try to put them in a facility that that they can afford, the state can afford, and those aren't always the best. They're converted schools, elementary schools or something. A lot of times they're understaffed. There's just too many people, so they keep them over medicated sometimes. So I spent 11 years trying to learn about the mental health system in the state of Georgia, to where I could try to, as a caring family member, try to get her better care. It was just something I was constantly trying to, navigate, if I could do that for her, because she didn't deserve to be in mediocrity. She deserved the best.
Right.
She had honor and dignity. So that was hard for me. I mean, if I'm being honest, like, I would drive 7 hours. I was about 7 hours away where we live, and I would go down there and I'd get about 30 minutes of quality time with her, before she it was too much for her. And then as soon as I turned, you're going to get me on this one. As soon as I turned and had to say goodbye and I'm walking down that hall, like, my heart's just ripping out of my chest, because I don't want to leave her there.
Right.
She didn't deserve to have to stay there, but I couldn't provide what she needed, so that was just that constant battle for me. There was pain, but love. There was thankfulness, but also pain.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and hear more of Steventhen's fantastic story on segment number 2 of Dear Jane. Stay tuned.
Dear Jane, the life-giving podcast.
Are you ready to have your perspective challenged? Introducing Dear Jane, the pro-life podcast that breaks boundaries and brings people together for groundbreaking conversations about the sanctity of life. We're not afraid to tackle the tough stuff, to confront the controversial, and to explore the gray areas that often divide us. Dear Jane hosts the conversations you didn't know you needed to hear. Whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, or somewhere in between, this podcast is your invitation to step outside your comfort zone and join a movement of understanding, empathy, and transformation.
On this edition of People You Should Know, we introduce you to Raul Reyes, president and founder of Life Equipped Global. Raul says there is a global abortion holocaust.
And there is no institution that can possibly respond to the Holocaust. Certainly it's not governments. They're being usurped mostly by the United States government, who bribes them into getting into the same philosophies that our country does. It's not going to be the courts, because the courts are more and more promoting abortion. It's not going to be educational systems. Universities is where so many young men and women are unfortunately exposed to really perverted philosophy. So it's got to be the church, but the church has never been taught about this issue. It's not taught in seminaries. It's not taught in Bible colleges. It's just not taught.
Life Equipped Global helps train and equip local leaders around the world with similar tools found at pregnancy centers in the U.S.
So we teach through Zoom. So it's 1 hour a week for about 18 weeks. At the end of the 18 weeks, they are life advocates. They then receive a certificate, and they're ready to do two things. They're either ready to help a person, whether it be a man or a woman, who thinks that in their situation, an abortion is their only option. They know how to respond with words of hope, words of truth, words of life, words of compassion. So they can actually help someone choose life. They're also equipped so that they are now ready to teach others.
Raul says when it comes to training pro-life leaders in other countries, it's important to understand that things are very different than what we see in the U.S.
Abortion outside of the United States is, especially in developing countries, Africa, Asia, and somewhat in South America, women are, it really is a patriarchal system, unfortunately, where women often, the man is the one that's forcing or demanding sexual activity. And once the woman gets pregnant, he's the one that's forcing or demanding an abortion. So Africa, for example, has somewhere around 300 pregnancy centers, but they have, almost a billion, 1.2, 1.4 billion people. So they need 10,000 pregnancy centers. Till we get to that point, the church itself becomes the word of life. And wherever you happen to be becomes the pregnancy center. It might be the park. It might be in the cafeteria, right? In school. It could be at work. Wherever it is, instead of saying, well, I know a pregnancy center, maybe you should call them. The person now says, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. Let's have I understand that this is a really difficult time for you. Let's go have a cup of tea and talk about it. And they're trained and they know what to say, and they can save lives.
To learn more about the work being done by Life Equipped Global, visit lifeequippedglobal.org.
Looking for a marketing agency that truly understands your pro-life mission? Choose Life Marketing is here for you. With our specialized services in web design, digital marketing, fundraising, and branding, we empower organizations like yours to effect life-saving change in your community. Together, we create a culture that values and protects life, one marketing message at a time. Join us in building a stronger community, one life at a time. Choose Life Marketing, where your mission matters.
Dear Jane, the life-giving podcast.
And we're back here on Dear Jane, visiting today with Steventhen Holland. And Steventhen has been sharing his amazing story with us, just the courage of his birth mother in giving birth to him under really painful, extraordinary circumstances. So Steventhen, we were talking about your experience after you met your mother, your birth mother, and the years that you had with her. They were kind of bittersweet, weren't they?
Yeah, I think bittersweet, but it's more sweet now because, I'm a believer, a man of God. She loved Jesus. There, if you watch the video I was talking about earlier, she says, I love Jesus, and that's enough for me. So as far as I'm concerned, the way I believe, I think that I'm going to see her again. I think she's whole and complete and restored now. So that's the hope that I have, that we have. That's the sweet part. Yeah. So yeah, it might be bitter. There's some bitterness, right here in this moment. I mean, it still hurts to talk about it. It's still painful.
Sure.
I know that there's a sweet, sweet time of reunion coming, sooner rather than later.
Did you have a chance, the two of you, did you talk with her about that time that she was pregnant with you and her thought process? I mean, it would have been difficult, and who knows how well the memory was, but did you have those type of conversations?
No, not. I mean, I asked her, like, one thing specifically I asked her was, did you really name me Steventhen? That was a burning question I had. Like, did you name me this, or did they make a mistake in the hospital? And when you hear her say it, it's Stephen then William. Like, it's all one. She says the first name and the middle name. So I truly believe that she meant for it to be Stephen then William. Like, that's what she wanted my name to be. So so I got, that was one that was just a beautiful, I had to ask. I wanted to know, like, where did that come from? But the fact that my adopted family kept the name, I think, is a miracle. Like, they wanted to honor her. They didn't even know the story, but they just wanted to honor her. But you know what? I haven't really been asked that question, but I'm thinking I probably, whether it be subconsciously or consciously, I don't think I wanted her to have to relive it.
Yeah.
Because
hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
Because that wasn't, I guess, on my agenda.
Sure.
A lot of times it was like when I first met her, I'm just awestruck, that this lady saved me, against all odds. And I just, if I just got to look at her and tell her I love you and thank you, that was enough for me.
I guess I wonder why she was pro-life. I mean, why did you talked about the pressure she was under, and making the choice but the level of sacrifice makes me just wonder why.
Oh man.
You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by that though?
That's
amazing.
It's a miracle. Yeah. I mean, I don't say that just, it's my story, and I still, like, I'm just in awe of what, but only God, and I look at, not that I'm, I know some people could hear this and, he thinks he's, better than her. And it's not that at all. I know God has created me for a purpose. Like, preserved my life for a purpose. And I think I walk in that. I was blessed to be, the third most booked pro-life speaker in the country last year. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I get to stand on stages and proclaim life, to affirm life and champion life, and hopefully challenge people's perspective on the life issue. And, I know that I've been in spaces where I've shared and I've had people come up to me and say, listen, there was, when it comes to rape and incest, I was kind of leaning this, the other way. And now that I've heard your story, like, it's changed my perspective completely. And if me sharing, be vulnerable enough and open, I say courageous, because it's not easy. Right. I've got to touch my pain a lot when I share, but I've seen people find healing when I touch my pain, and it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Wanted to, you and I had a chance to visit a while back, and I knew your story. I wanted our listeners to hear it. And so let's go there with what you just mentioned. That's a big, even within the pro-life movement, there's a lot of different feelings of, well, what about those really, really tough circumstances? We always hear rape and incest. But rarely do we get a chance to hear from someone who was the result of that and now is leading a thriving life. When you find yourself in that conversation with people, what do you share?
My story.
Yeah. I mean, how do you help them navigate that debate?
Yeah. Well, and I know that was a short answer, but it is true. I share my story, and I know, in the pro-life movement, we have some people that are, different approaches. And I feel like, what God's kind of called me to do is to be bold, to share my story. And it's confrontational sometimes, but my intentions are, I'm just going to share my story and, drop mic and walk away, because like you said, I'm the person, I'm the baby, I'm the child that was a result of, a gang rape of this 18-year-old woman. But I'm still here and I still have purpose. So the circumstances of how I was conceived didn't decrease my value as a human being, right? That, even though someone else because I've thought about, there were times in my life, even early on, I think when I started sharing my story, I would say stuff like, well, it wasn't fair that my mom had to go through that. Well, it wasn't fair, but that's also, as I started processing and thinking about, and I say this when I speak sometimes, could there be purpose in pain? Could there be purpose in pain? And I don't believe, again, this is maybe some deep theological, doctrinal type stuff, but I think God's all holy, right? And I don't think that he made that happen. This evil happened, and then he stepped into that and brought beauty from, the cliche is brought beauty from ashes, right? Brought beauty from this terrible situation. So, it's not fair that it happened to my mom, but also, I can look back now and say that God had a plan, though, for it. It's big. It's big. And sometimes I can feel like, man, am I being selfish in saying that? Like, well, no, I don't think so. When you look back and say, my adopted mom, we have conversations. I talk to her almost every day. She'll be almost 80 years old. My dad passed away almost, a little over 9 years ago. So she gets lonely, and, we talk, and I tell her when I'm traveling, and every time she's like, it just amazes me how, how your little mama got all the way to this little small country town in Whitwell, Tennessee, and they had a miscarriage 2 years prior. So God used that pain to open up their hearts to start foster parenting. And if that wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have had our home open to bring you in. Wow. And then to look at, then 27 years old, you get to meet your mom, and then you capture this film, and then it's just like all these little God winks or God moments of how he was orchestrating his plan that maybe we can't see. And it's too big for us to even comprehend, honestly. But when you just slow down long enough and just start dissecting and seeing, like, he was in it the whole time. So again, you ask why. It's just God, I don't know any other way to say it. It's too big for me sometimes. I just sit back and it's a miracle. It truly is a miracle. Yeah.
So the name of this podcast is Dear Jane, and that's in reference to Jane Roe of the original Roe v. Wade. But as you think of the Jane of the 21st century, the woman who out there, let's say she happens upon this podcast, and whatever her circumstance may be, she finds herself with an unplanned pregnancy. What would be your message to her?
For anybody that may be listening to this podcast, that you feel like the Jane, or that you find yourself in that unplanned pregnancy and all those things, I think the biggest thing is you're not alone. You are not alone. I get the pleasure of working with beautiful organizations all over the country. I've been blessed to be in 39 states, and every single one of them, I can say without hesitation, they will love you unconditionally if you step foot into those places. A local pregnancy center that can help you. There's going to be a place of hope and a place of love. And I think if you can just realize, just to get a glimmer of hope, like just that small, minute, just a spark that, hey, I can do this. There's hope for me, because that's the beauty of the pro-life movement is people think, well, we're saving babies. Well, yeah, we are saving babies, but really we're loving and bringing hope to moms.
Right.
So like my birth mom didn't have that, but she deserved that. She had value. She had worth, just like you do. So that would be my encouragement to you, that you are not alone. And there's people literally with open arms and open hearts just waiting for you every day to walk through their doors and get support and get loved on. So yeah, you're not alone. You can do this.
So tell us where we can find the video. You said it's on YouTube.
It is. It's on my Steventhen Holland, Holland, Steventhen, Steventhn. It's on my YouTube channel. The title, I believe, is something along the lines of 27-year-old man meets birth mom for first time.
What a moving story. Can't tell you how grateful we are that you shared it with us today. Steventhen, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Dear Jane, the life-giving podcast.
My thanks again to Steventhen Holland for joining us today on Dear Jane. Do yourself a favor and look up his video at his website, Steventhen, or go to YouTube and look up his channel, Steventhen Holland. The video where he meets his birth mother will just move you. It just will. So check that out, and check out his website. Powerful story of love and hope and courage from Steventhen Holland. Thank you for listening to Dear Jane. Don't forget to like or subscribe so you can be made aware when we have new episodes. You can also check us out on Twitter or Instagram. Just search for Dear Jane Podcast. Our producer is Kate Ewell. Our editor is Jacob McCormick. I'm Scott Baker. Thank you for listening.